Humming a cheerful tune, the woman couldn't contain her bubbling joy. Before her lay vibrant macarons and a steaming cup of rich coffee, her life's greatest delight. Elegantly lifting the cup with gloved hands, she beamed at the sweet spread. Haha tilde, coffee and macarons are the best combination, she exclaimed, savoring the harmony of flavors. It was a perfect moment of bliss, keeping her going through the tiring day, unaware of the trouble soon to follow. Dressed in her elaborate pink gown, the woman couldn't resist the sugary temptation. With flushed cheeks, she lifted a colorful macaron. Perhaps being too greedy, she didn't take a polite bite. Instead, she popped the entire treat into her tiny mouth. Her cheeks immediately puffed out like a hamster, stuffed to the brim. As she tried to chew, tears welled up in her large, shimmering eyes. Suddenly, her throat felt blocked. She realized she had been far too hasty. Cough, cough, a violent fit seized her delicate frame. Her face flushed a deep crimson, tears streaming from panicked eyes as she desperately clutched her chest. It was no use, the sweet treat was lodged tight. Suddenly, her throat felt completely blocked, cutting off her breath. Cold sweat trickled down her temples as the terrifying reality set in. She had been too greedy, swallowing it whole, and now she was paying the price. She couldn't breathe. Desperate to dislodge the stuck sweet, she grabbed the cup and took a frantic gulp. Slurp ... but in her haste, she forgot one crucial detail. It's hot. The searing liquid burned her tongue, shocking her senses. Instinct took over before she could stop herself. No, she cried out, eyes squeezing shut. Instead of relief, she ended up spewing the dark coffee everywhere, watching in horror as the scalding brown liquid splattered uncontrollably. The catastrophe unfolded in slow motion. The dark, sticky liquid didn't just stain the desk, it drenched the very heart of her livelihood. Coffee splattered ruthlessly across the mechanical keys and soaked deeply into the crisp paper of her manuscript. It was a nightmare scenario. This wasn't just a mess. It was the important typewriter she used for her work, now drowning in a sea of brown. The silence of the room was heavy with the weight of this messy accident. Anxious that she might be caught, she frantically scrubbed the typewriter. Just a quick wipe should do the trick. Ha ha! She giggled, relief washing over her as the visible stains vanished. Satisfied, she let out a weary sigh, believing the crisis was averted. Poor soul. She had absolutely no idea that this seemingly minor mistake was the first domino falling, a trivial error destined to spiral into a catastrophic disaster that would change everything. Choi Han-seok floated amidst the azure sky, his body resting on a fluffy cloud, dead, gone at the vibrant age of 29. It was a reality too cruel to accept. As he lay there, the weight of his unfulfilled life pressed down on him. Tears streamed freely from his eyes, mixing with snot in a display of raw, unfiltered grief. Staring into the void, his heart broke with regret. If I had known, he sobbed, I would have lived and enjoyed life a little longer. Bathed in the roar of the crowd, Choi Han-seok stood at the pinnacle of the world. He was the heavyweight champion, a beast among men. With a physique carved by gods and endless effort, he dominated the ring. Raising his massive belt and trophy high, he was hailed as the strongest man in the world. His existence was like a blazing comet, burning bright and fast. Truly, his life could be summarized in a single sentence, a short but incredibly intense legend. Blinding headlights pierced the heavy rain, freezing Choi Han-seok in place. The massive steel beast roared closer, sealing his fate. Hit by a truck. What rotten luck! The absurdity of it all was suffocating. He was the world's strongest man, yet he was ending like a cheap cartoon cliche. Why now? He had just decided to retire, to finally live for himself. Rage boiled beneath his shock. Of all times, the universe chose this moment to snuff him out. Sprawled like a giant across the soft clouds, Han-seok gazed into the endless azure. The rage had faded, replaced by a strange tranquility. Death isn't as bad as I thought, he mused. No more bleeding, no more fighting, just peace. He let out a long, contented sigh, finally relaxing his weary soul, but his solitude was short-lived. Suddenly, a shower of shimmering light rained down from the heavens, signaling a divine arrival. A blinding pillar of light pierced the clouds, forcing Hyeon Seok to bolt upright. An angel descending from the heavens was a being of breathtaking beauty. With hair like spun gold and pristine white wings, she smiled apologetically. "I'm sorry." "Have you been waiting long?" she chirped. Stunned, Hyeon Seok could only stare. She was a masterpiece that made reality fade away. If he knew death held such sights, he would have lived very differently. Her face was a sculpture of perfection, radiating a divine glow. "Hello, my name is Rachel. I'm in charge of recruiting people whose time on Earth is up," she announced with a professional yet dazzling smile. Hyeon Seok was floored. As he gazed at the angelic beauty, a profound realization struck him. It wasn't fear, but deep, comedic regret, damn it. If I had known an angel like this existed, I would have started going to church ages ago. Rachel's bright demeanor took a manipulative turn. "Mr. Hyeon Seok, you have two choices," she announced cheerfully. "One is to be reincarnated as a pathetic, single old man." Instantly, her expression shifted from radiant to tragic. Wiping away an imaginary tear, she sniffled. "Ha-hoo-hoo, it was a masterclass in emotional blackmail, painting his potential future as bleakly as possible to steer him toward her hidden agenda." The angel's playful demeanor vanished instantly. Rachel leaned in aggressively, face inches from his. Her blue eyes burned with intensity as she grasped his head, forcing him to listen. "The only remaining option is to be reborn as a hero with my current body and mind to save the world," she declared. Hyeon Seok froze, cold sweat rolling down his temple. Her overwhelming presence filled his entire vision. He stammered weakly, "You're standing too close, ... Wealth, fame, beautiful women. Don't you think dying is a waste?" Rachel screamed, grabbing Hyeon Seok's shoulders and shaking him violently. Her angelic facade cracked, revealing a desperate recruiter. Hyeon Seok, eyes spinning with dizziness, tried to resist. Yes, but let me explain ... double quotes. He couldn't finish. Rachel loomed over him, shouting in his face, refusing to let him think. She was bulldozing through his hesitation with overwhelming pressure. Rachel wove a tapestry of lies that Hyeon Seok couldn't resist. In his mind, he saw himself as a gallant knight in shining armor, surrounded by a harem of beauties. The village chief will run out shouting "hero" and offer his stunning daughter, Rachel promised sweetly. Entranced by this perfect fantasy of honor and romance, Hyeon Seok's eyes sparkled naively. "Wow, ... double quotes," he whispered, completely hooked by the sweet temptation. "Time's up. If you keep hesitating, I'll take it as a refusal," Rachel snapped, pointing impatiently at her wrist. The urgency in her voice was a clear ultimatum: choose now or rot forever. Panic surged through Hyeon Seok. The thought of losing this second chance was unbearable. Clenching his fists tightly, he shouted with desperate determination, "I'll do it. I'll do the hero job." He had no idea he was signing a contract with the devil. With a casual wave and a comical pop, Hyeon Seok vanished into thin air. The moment he was gone, the divine facade crumbled. Rachel slumped onto her golden throne, letting out a weary groan. She whipped out a phone, her voice dripping with businesslike cynicism. "Phew, I'm beat. Hello, candidate 137,421 is transferred. Send the bonus immediately." The holy angel was nothing but a ruthless headhunter cashing in on another poor soul. Hyeon Seok woke gradually to a murmuring voice. "Ice ... wake up ... he smirked internally. Surely, this was the classic opening scene. Wake up, hero, but the fantasy shattered instantly. A terrifying shadow loomed over him, roaring, "I'll gouge your eyes out now." "Aren't you going to wake up?" His eyes flew open in sheer shock. Instead of a gentle village chief, he was being greeted with a brutal death threat. This wasn't the dream start he expected. Before he could process the threat, a tremendous impact struck his gut. Gasp. Hyun Seok was launched through the air like a ragdoll, slamming into the jagged rock wall with a deafening bang. The stone cracked under the force, and dust billowed around him. He slid to the ground, clutching his stomach in agony. A kick at the very first meeting, he was the world heavyweight champion. To be treated like a common punching bag, it was humiliating and insane. Standing before him was a living nightmare. A red-skinned behemoth with muscles ready to explode and horns wreathed in searing flames. The sheer pressure was suffocating. "You said you were a hero?" The monster growled, its voice shaking the earth. Hyun Seok, once the world's strongest man, now felt like a mere ant. Sweating profusely and clasping his hands in terror, he stammered, I think so." Reality crashed down hard. This wasn't a fantasy adventure, and so true hell begins. A sudden epiphany struck him like a bolt of lightning. Boom, his fear vanished, replaced by surging confidence. "That's right, I am a hero," he realized. He was the protagonist destined to defeat the Demon King. This bull monster was nothing but a tutorial dummy to test his strength. Eyes blazing with golden power, he clenched his fist. The strongest man in the world would not be stopped. He would become the ultimate hero. Ridran couldn't believe his ears. He leaned forward, mocking the puny human. "Say that again. What did you say, huh?" He taunted, gripping his massive axe, but Hyun Seok wasn't cowering anymore. The spirit of the world champion ignited within him. He assumed a sharp fighting stance, eyes burning with defiance against the fiery backdrop of hell. "I said don't get cocky, you son of a bitch," he shouted, fully prepared to crush this so-called tutorial boss. With the speed of lightning, Hyun Seok unleashed his signature high kick, Pak. His foot connected squarely with the monster's jaw, the impact echoing through the air. It was a flawless strike, one that no opponent in the ring had ever withstood. Sweat dripped down his intense face as he felt the thrill of a clean hit. It landed perfectly, he thought with grim satisfaction. Surely, even a monster couldn't shrug off the kick of a world champion. The celebration was premature. The monster didn't budge an inch. Instead, thick veins began to writhe and bulge across its crimson face like angry snakes. Ridran's eyes, bloodshot and terrifying, locked onto Hyun Seok with chilling intensity. The air turned heavy with suffocating bloodlust. "What do you think you're doing?" This isn't even funny. The perfect kick hadn't caused damage. It had only insulted a calamity. A massive red hand clamped down on his ankle like a vice, halting the attack instantly. Ridran sneered, "Didn't you say you were a hero? If you're a hero, this should be nothing." Crack. The sound of bone grinding was sickening. Arg. Hyun Seok screamed, his face twisting in agony. The overwhelming pressure threatened to shatter his leg completely. In the grip of true power, the strongest man was reduced to a helpless child. A mountain of red muscle descended upon him. The fist, larger than his head, blocked out the sky, bringing with it the pressure of impending doom. "A good sleep should bring you to your senses, self-proclaimed hero," the monster scoffed. Hyun Seok's vision tunneled rapidly, the world blurring into a dark vignette. As consciousness slipped away, only one final thought echoed in the void. I'm screwed. Then, total darkness claimed him. He was the Red Nightmare Ridran, the supreme predator and commander of the 2nd Slave Unit. His mere presence made the slaves around him tremble in terror, bowing their heads to avoid his gaze. Yet the beast sat slumped on a stone block, looking not fierce but utterly exhausted. Resting his chin on a massive fist, flames flickering on his horns, he groaned deeply, sigh. I don't know where all these lunatics are coming from. Dealing with these endless idiots was tiring work. They were a parade of fools, from giant chickens to disco dancers shouting, "Come at me, Demon King." Before being crushed like bugs, idiots, Ridran grumbled. Shaking off the annoyance, his golden eyes narrowed in calculation. The fortress repairs were urgent, but that human from earlier lingered in his mind. Unlike the others, that one had raw power. He might make a good slave master if properly manipulated, he mused, a sinister plan forming. Trapped behind cold iron bars, Han Seok's spirit remained unbroken nor perhaps just delusional. Clang, clang, he shook the cell door violently, a bandage wrapped around his throbbing head. "Open it up, you bastards! Bring that bullhead here!" He roared, conveniently forgetting he had been knocked out cold. His racket summoned a guard, a scrawny goblin with bulging eyes. It looked pathetic, but the sharp spear in its hand suggested otherwise. The goblin jack might be small, but the weapon he wielded was a harbinger of death, creaking. The screeching sound of heavy steel dragging against stone echoed through the dungeon. Sparks flew as the massive, blood-crusted blade stopped right before the cell. Glaring with bulging, manic eyes, the creature hissed, "Human, do you want to die, huh?" It was a chilling realization for Han Seok. In this hell, even a runt could butcher him. The stench of dried blood filled his nostrils as the cold steel hovered millimeters from his nose. Han Seok froze, beads of cold sweat rolling down his pale face. The goblin grinned viciously through the bars. "If you shout one more time, I'll make boiled meat out of your thighs." Do you understand? The graphic threat paralyzed him. Swallowing his pride and fear, the hero nodded silently, realizing one wrong move meant being butchered alive. Huddled in the gloomy corner, Han Seok clutched his head in utter despair. Rachel's radiant smile haunted his mind, taunting his misery. "Hero my ass. Couldn't they at least give me a sacred sword?" he lamented. He had arrived empty-handed to face monsters twice his size. Tears of regret and resentment streamed down his face. Where did it all go wrong? The admiration for the angel rapidly turned into a dark, brewing hatred. He had been played for a fool. Just as he was cursing the angel, a voice pierced the darkness of the adjacent cell. "Hey there, are you new? I'm Park Tae-soo." Han Seok's heart skipped a beat. That name ... that language, it wasn't the growls of monsters, but the familiar sounds of home. His eyes widened in disbelief as hope surged through him. "Are you Korean?" he gasped. Hearing his mother tongue in this hellish otherworld felt like a divine miracle. The man in the ragged uniform leaned back with effortless swagger, ignoring the grime. "Everyone in my Ondong knew Park Tae-soo, the king of fists. I'm a hero too," he boasted casually. Han Seok stared at the bearded, wretched figure in disbelief. "A hero here," it felt like a bad comedy sketch. Gripping the cold iron bars until his knuckles turned white, his patience snapped. "Stop joking around," he hissed. He was in hell. He didn't have time for the delusions of a senile old man. Pandemonium erupted instantly. "I'm a hero too, Rachel. Hundreds of voices screamed from the shadowy cells, their desperate hands reaching out like zombies. The dungeon echoed with curses against the deceitful angel who had doomed them all. Amidst the chaos of broken dreams, Park Tae-soo grinned with bitter amusement. "Well, rookie, do you still think you're special as a hero?" The crushing truth hit Han Seok. He wasn't the chosen one. He was just another victim in a mass scam. Rachel strode down the pristine marble corridor, adjusting her white suit with nervous determination. Despite her recent stellar performance, the summons from her superior had her on edge. "I need to get my bonus for achieving top performance this month too," she muttered, greed flickering in her eyes. Reaching the grand golden doors, she cleared her throat loudly, ahem, and plastered on her best fake smile, ready to charm her way out of whatever trouble awaited. Inside the sleek office, the atmosphere was suffocating. Frizzell, her stern superior, didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Rachel, the man called Choi Han-seok. Do you remember him?" he asked, piercing her with a sharp gaze. Rachel flinched, sweat beading on her forehead. "Of course," she stammered, clutching her lapels nervously. He was an important hero candidate with SSS-grade potential. An ominous feeling crept up her spine. Why bring up her golden goose now? The desk shook violently as Frizzell slammed his fist down, crushing the papers beneath. His composure shattered completely. Why on earth is Choi Hyun-seok imprisoned in a Demon King's army fortress? He roared, veins bulging on his forehead from the stress. The accusation struck Rachel like a physical blow. Her face went pale, pupil trembling in horror as the reality set in. Demon King's army fortress? She whispered, the catastrophic weight of her mistake finally crashing down on her. A repressed memory violently surfaced, the spilled coffee. The sticky, dark liquid soaking the typewriter keys 1 month ago. She had just wiped it away and laughed it off, thinking nothing of it. But now, the dots connected with terrifying clarity. Could it be then ... double quotes Rachel whispered, her soul seemingly leaving her body. That clumsy accident hadn't just stained a machine. It had corrupted the transfer coordinates, damning the SSS-grade hero to absolute hell. Frizzell stepped closer, his shadow falling over her like a sentencing judge. He placed a heavy hand on her trembling shoulder, a sinister smile playing on his lips. Rachel, I trust you're prepared? The question wasn't rhetorical, it was a threat. Rachel stood frozen, her eyes wide and vacant, as if her soul had evaporated. The weight of his hand felt like a death grip. She knew exactly what prepared meant: fix this mess or pay the ultimate price. Under the blood-red sky, thousands of slaves toiled endlessly, expanding the ominous fortress. Clang, clang, the rhythmic strike of pickaxes was the heartbeat of this hell. Among them was Hyun-seok, his eyes dull and lifeless like a dead fish. Covered in grime and sweat, he mechanically swung his tool, chanting the brainwashing anthem of his captors. We are ... the great ... Demon King's army. Let's kill humans ... The once proud champion was now just a broken cog in the machine. Under the crimson sky of the Demon King's fortress, Choi Hyun-seok stood motionless, his pickaxe heavy in his grip amidst the despair. Suddenly, Jack, the cruel goblin overseer, launched himself into the air. Huh, what are you waiting for, you slug? He screamed, delivering a stinging slap to the back of the tall man's head. Hyun-seok, eyes hollow and sweating, bore the humiliation silently, forcing himself to hide the burning rage of a fallen hero. I'm going, haha. Choi Hyun-seok forced a servo grin, though one eye burned crimson with barely contained fury. He bowed to the vile goblin, hiding his killing intent behind a mask of fear. As he walked away, leaving Jack and his blood-crusted sword behind, Hyun-seok's fist clenched until his knuckles turned white. He wouldn't die here, just wait, he swore inwardly. One day, I'll bash that little runt's head 500 times. Slumped against the cold stone of his cell, Choi Hyun-seok stared into the void until a familiar azure glow materialized. The holographic interface chimed silently, stamina 30, 31 up. His hollow eyes widened slightly, a spark of life returning to them. Oh, my stamina increased by 1, he murmured. It was a meager gain, but in this hellish prison, it was the first proof that his struggle for survival wasn't in vain. Clinging to the cold iron bars, Park Tae-soo couldn't hide his awe. Pickaxe usage rank D. Usually, it takes months. He exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. You really have the makings of a real hero. Yet, behind his friendly smile lay the sharp instincts of a corporate survivor. He is the highest grade lifeline, Tae-soo realized, a calculating glint in his eyes. I must stay on his good side. This was his only way out of hell. Clutching his head in agony, Choi Hyun-seok stared at the ruthless calculation floating in the air. To reach the necessary 210 points would take for agonizing years. A cold sweat ran down his face. For years in this hell, impossible. Despair quickly ignited into a blazing fury. His eyes snapped open, burning with resentment. Damn it, this is all because of Rachel. He snarled, cursing the woman who had dumped him into this nightmare. Moonlight filtered through the iron bars, casting a cage of shadows over Choi Hyun-seok's exhausted body. Lying on the cold stone, his mind raced, grappling with the mystery of hero points. Yet, Confusion quickly gave way to a singular, burning obsession. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his eyes grew bloodshot with intensity. Whatever he internalized, his hatred festering in the silence. All he wanted was to tear apart the devil named Rachel. Lost in his obsession with the mysterious hero points, Hyun Seo didn't notice the presence creeping into his cell. "Shall I tell you?" A smooth voice pierced the silence, freezing the blood in his veins. He whipped his head around, eyes widening in shock. Standing in the suffocating darkness was a hooded figure, watching him with an air of amusement that sent shivers down his spine. The sudden voice made Hyun Seo spin around, his senses reeling in the damp cell. The sound was unmistakable, etching itself into his memory through pure hatred. His eyes widened in disbelief, pupils trembling as the realization hit him. This voice ... it can't be. It was the voice of the one person he detested more than death itself. The hooded shadow dissipated, revealing not a grim reaper, but a tiny, glowing figure with fluttering wings. Floating before him with a brazenly innocent smile was the architect of his living hell. "It's been a while, hero," Rachel chirped, her cheerful tone mocking the grim reality of the cell. Hyun Seok's breath hitched, the audacity. His shock paralyzed him, choking the venomous curses rising in his throat. "Why you?" he stammered, staring in disbelief at the shrunken form of his nemesis. Floating like an exquisite figurine, Rachel beamed with an innocence that bordered on audacity. Her golden hair and pristine wings remained, but she had shrunk to a mere 30 centimeters. "You want to know about hero points? I'll tell you," she chirped, oblivious to the murderous aura radiating from the man she had doomed. To her, she was offering helpful guidance. To Hyun Seok, she was nothing more than a mosquito begging to be swatted. AAACK. Rachel's explanation was abruptly choked off as a rough, scarred hand snatched her from the air. Her tiny wings fluttered uselessly against the viz-like grip. "WH, what are you doing?" she stammered, terror replacing her earlier confidence. Hyun Seok didn't offer a smile. His eyes were cold, locking onto her like a predator securing its prey. "Gotcha," he muttered, his voice dripping with pent-up rage. The hero had finally caught the devil, and he had no intention of being gentle. Flames of unadulterated rage erupted from Hyun Seok's eyes, casting a demonic shadow over his face. He grinned like a madman, saving the moment. "Yes. First, let's have you take some hits." The sheer malice in his voice froze the air. Rachel, shrinking back in terror, realized too late that her title of fairy offered no protection here. Hero," she squeaked, sweat rolling down her face. But the man before her wasn't a hero anymore. He was an avenger. Ignoring her desperate pleas, Hyun Seo gripped the fairy by her ankle and swung her around like a ragdoll. Wait, let me talk," Rachel shrieked, her eyes spinning as the world became a blur of motion. With the ruthless precision of a major league pitcher, he slammed her down, THUD. She crashed headfirst into the pile of filthy straw, landing in a pitiful heap of golden hair and crumpled wings. The hero was exacting his payment in pain. Towering over the fallen angel, Hyun Seok's smile was terrifyingly serene. "Calm down? This is just the beginning," he declared, his fists clenched as if ready for round two. Below him, Rachel sat crumpled on the filthy straw, her golden hair disheveled and tears welling in her large, fearful eyes. "UGHH ... H hero ... please ... double quotes," she whimpered, realizing her nightmare had only just begun. The storm of violence subsided, replaced by a cold negotiation. Hyun Seok sat against the damp wall, holding the shrunken fairy in his palms like a captured bird. Her fate was now literally in his hands. Staring at her with an unreadable expression, he confirmed the terms of her penance. "So you've become my manager until I defeat the Demon King." It wasn't a question. It was the acceptance of a new, twisted reality. Hyun Seok's gaze remained cold, unmoved by the fairy's talk of destiny. "Sorry, but I'll pass on being a hero," he declared flatly, shattering Rachel's expectations. Crossing his arms in the dim dungeon light, he looked down at her with brutal pragmatism. "Why should I fight the Demon King and save the world?" To him, the title of hero was a shackle, not an honor. He didn't want to save the world, he just wanted to survive it. Rachel floated desperately, clenching her tiny fists as tears welled up. "But Hero Hyan Seok is different. You have SSS-grade potential," she pleaded, invoking the destiny she had ruined, but her words fell on deaf ears. Hyan Seok stood amidst the shadows, his expression weary yet unyielding. "Enough," he interrupted, his voice devoid of heroic ambition. "My goal is to escape this fortress and become an adventurer." That's all. He wanted freedom, not a mission. Memories of his past life flooded back a relentless hamster wheel of discipline. Veins bulging under heavy iron, tasteless meals of chicken and broccoli, and a calendar marking days of endless grind. He had pushed his body to the absolute breaking point to become a champion. But sitting in that lonely room, staring at the wall, Hyan Seok had realized the truth. He was done with sacrifice. He didn't want another life of duty. He craved the freedom he never had. "Hero, someone's approaching." Rachel's frantic mental message echoed just as she vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving Hyan Seok clutching at thin air. Before he could process the sudden solitude, the heavy iron door shuddered violently. Bang, bang, dust drifted from the ceiling as a harsh voice barked from the other side. Human, come out." It was Jack. Hyan Seok's eyes narrowed. A summons at this hour meant nothing good. Seated behind a desk carved with grim skulls, Redrum the Red-Skinned Demon General with horns ablaze reviewed a parchment. "I heard from Jack," he rumbled, his voice echoing with authority. "He said you're working the most enthusiastically among the slaves." Standing before him in heavy chains, Choi Hyan Seok hid his shock behind his stoic mask. The cruel goblin who whipped him daily had actually put in a good word. "This shorty praised me." The irony was suffocating. Redrum leaned forward, the flames on his horns dancing menacingly. With a grin that was both terrifying and strangely welcoming, the Demon General dropped a bombshell. "So, Choi Hyan Seok, how about becoming the slave master?" It wasn't offered to rise from filth to power. However, before Hyan Seok could even calculate the benefits, a shrill, invisible scream exploded in his mind. "Absolutely not." Rachel floated before him, her tiny face flushed with righteous indignation. Ignoring Rachel's shrill protest, Hyan Seok bent his waist in a perfect 90-degree bow, his voice booming with shameless enthusiasm. "Thank you, Lord Redrum. I'll do my best to drive the slave's heart." The display of loyalty was so convincing it washed away any of the demon's suspicion. "Ha ha ha. Good." Redrum laughed heartily, pleased with his new pawn. The hero had just sold his dignity for survival, and he did it with a smile. "Crazy, crazy, crazy." Rachel buzzed around his head like an enraged mosquito, her tiny fists shaking in disbelief. "How could you accept such an offer?" she shrieked, appalled that a hero would serve a demon. Yet, Hyan Seok walked on with a smirk of calculation, unbothered by her moral outrage. "I have my reasons, so don't worry," he replied coolly. Behind that confident smile lay the interface of a hidden quest. He wasn't selling his soul, he was farming points. A blue light illuminated the dark cell, reflecting in Hyan Seok's determined eyes. He clenched his fist as the holographic window materialized. The system mocked his predicament, dropped due to some idiot's mistake, but offered a lifeline. 100 hero points. This was the breakthrough he needed. Gain Redrum's favor. He read, if becoming the devil's lackey was the price for power, so be it. Perched atop the rough scaffolding, Choi Hyan Seok unleashed the fury of a Republic of Korea Army sergeant. His face flushed with theatrical rage. He jabbed a finger at the exhausted laborers below. "My grandmother could run faster than that. Can't you move any quicker?" His voice boomed, shattering the construction site's weary silence. To the fearful slaves, he was a mad tyrant, but this hero was simply grinding his charisma stat, turning the dusty fortress into his personal boot camp. The slave sprinted through the dust, driven by Choi Hyun-seok's iron command. Arms crossed atop the platform, he surveyed the scene with the eagle eyes of a veteran sergeant. While the slaves saw a tyrant, the glowing blue window revealed his true game. You have commanded numerous people. Hidden stat charisma has increased. His expression remained stoic, but internally, the hero relished the growth. This wasn't just labor, it was efficient level grinding. Mwahaha, Choi Hyun-seok's maniacal laughter erupted, a villainous purple aura flaring around him as he celebrated the stat boost. Perched on his head, the invisible Rachel frantically yanked his hair in despair. "Hero, please wake up!" She shrieked, terrified he was becoming a true demon king. Ignoring the tiny angel's desperate smacks and pleas, Hyun-seok continued his crazed cackle. To the onlookers, the slave master had lost his mind. To him, the grind was just getting good. With the passion of a military band leader, Choi Hyun-seok bellowed from the rocks, "We are the great Demon King's army." His enhanced charisma carried his voice across the fortress. In stark contrast, the slaves trudged along, eyes hollow, mumbling the grim lyrics, "Defeat the humans... Devour them... It was a grotesque choir conducted by a hero playing the villain a little too well, forcing his own kind to sing for their captors. Amidst the smoldering ruins, a chained slave trembled, whispering to his comrade, "He's completely mad. I heard he's supposed to be a hero." They gazed fearfully at the silhouette emerging from the flames. Choi Hyun-seok stood impassive, a whip coiled in his hand like a cruel master. He looked nothing like a savior to the masses. He was a traitorous tyrant. But behind those cold eyes, the hero was simply playing his part to perfection. Rachel floated in the air, her tiny face red with indignation. "Wake up! Didn't you say you wanted to go on adventures?" She shrieked, pointing an accusing finger, but the hero was far too comfortable in his VIP quarters. Lounging on the stone bench, Choi Hyun-seok casually crunched into a fresh apple, completely ignoring the nagging angel. "Wow, this fruit is delicious." To Rachel's horror, he seemed more interested in the perks of being a traitor than saving the world. Choi Hyun-seok tapped the holographic window only he could see. "Look, it's written right here." "Win the favor of read run... he insisted, claiming his treachery was actually a system mandate. Rachel crossed her tiny arms, pouting in disbelief. A hero quest to aid a demon? Absurd. Yet, as she glared, a realization struck her like a bolt of lightning. Unless Lady Frizzell? Could her superior have tampered with the system to keep this chaotic candidate alive? Perched on the wooden table, Rachel swung her tiny legs, her expression clouded with doubt. A spectral silhouette of Choi Hyun-seok loomed behind her, a reminder of the enigma he was. Was he a savior in disguise or a demon in the making? Her mind drifted to Lady Frizzell. If this absurd quest was truly her superior's design to keep him alive, then perhaps there was a method to his madness. For now, the little angel could only watch in silence. Crash, the door splintered as Jack barged in, sword drawn. "Lord Redrin summons you." At the mere mention of the demon, Choi Hyun-seok sprang from his bench like a reflex. "Lord Redrin, yes, understood," he bellowed, saluting with the crisp energy of a fanatic recruit. He seemed ready to charge into hell for his master. Floating nearby, Rachel's shoulders dropped in defeat. She watched the so-called hero play the perfect lackey, her spirit wilting. Choi Hyun-seok unleashed his ultimate weapon, shameless flattery. "I'm satisfied just being able to work for Lord Redrin. Everything is thanks to your wise guidance," he declared, bowing deep with a whip in hand. The Minotaur executive sat in silence, awkwardly scratching his cheek. The air grew heavy. Hyun-seok's heart sank had he laid it on too thick, but the hum wasn't anger. It was the bashfulness of a demon unaccustomed to praise. The quest was complete. A gentle smile played on Choi Hyun-seok's lips, a facade of loyalty masking his true intent. But as the blue system window flashed before his eyes, Riedren's favorability has increased. Target achieved. 100 hero points obtained. His gaze sharpened instantly. The warmth vanished, replaced by the calculating stare of a predator who had just secured his prize. The hero shop was now open. It was time to stop playing the servant and start building his army. Riedren glanced at the paperwork, unaware the human had finished his performance. With the quest complete, Choi Hyun-seo dropped the flatterer's mask. Standing at attention, he delivered his bold gambit. "If it's all right with you, may I make one request? I want to train the slaves." It sounded like a loyal proposal for efficiency, but in truth, the hero was asking permission to build his own army right under the demon's nose. Under the command 10's flickering light, Duke Laban stood like a silver-maned lion. He slammed a gaunted finger onto the map of Hammer'n Fortress, silencing the weary nobles. "We attack again," he commanded, his voice steel against their doubts. He proposed a daring gambit. "Lure the demon army out to be slaughtered. We will rescue our citizens." He vowed, unaware that the slaves inside were already under a very different kind of command. Duke Laban's gaze bored into the map of Hammer'n Fortress, his gaunted hand heavy on the parchment. "We absolutely must capture Hammer'n Fortress," he vowed, his voice carrying the weight of the Empire. He revealed his clever plan, a feint to draw the demons out and reclaim the stronghold. He stood tall, the picture of a righteous savior, unaware that the very slaves he sought to liberate were currently being whipped into shape by a fellow hero. Laban's gauntlets creaked as he clenched his fists, his mind filled with harrowing visions of his people suffering under the demon's lash. "We can rescue our citizens who are being worked to death," he thundered, his heart burning with genuine compassion. Yet, the irony was thick enough to cut with a blade. He prepared to storm a hell that had already been turned into a boot camp by a fellow human, unaware that his rescue might just be an unwanted interruption. Choi Hyun-seo waved his hands like a visionary conductor, weaving us seductively. "Elite working slaves who move in perfect unison." Praise for Lord Riedren will echo throughout the Demon King's army, he declared with theatrical passion. Riedren sat captivated, his bovine eyes widening at the prospect of such glory. To the simple-minded demon, this was a promise of efficiency. But to the cunning hero, this was the first step of a coup. The bait had been taken. Blinded by delusions of grandeur, Riedren grinned, imagining the roar of applause from his peers. "I permit it," the Minotaur declared, believing he had secured a legendary workforce. Choi Hyun-seo bowed a perfect 90 degrees. "Thank you," he replied with feigned respect. But hidden from view, a wicked smirk curled on his lips. The monster had swallowed the bait hook, line, and sinker. The rebellion had officially begun. As the heavy door clicked shut, the respectful facade vanished instantly. In the dim corridor, Choi Hyun-seok's true nature surfaced. A sinister grin stretched across his face, eyes glinting with cunning triumph. "You took the bait," he thought, savoring the victory. The mighty demon executive had just handed him the keys to his own destruction. Now, with permission granted, the hero would turn these chains into weapons. Crazy, and you call yourself a hero? Rachel pummeled Choi Hyun-seok's chest with her tiny fists, her blows as harmless as kitten paws. She was livid at his plan to make greatest working slaves. Hyun-seok stood unfazed, enduring the cute assault with a wary expression. "Stay still for a moment," he said calmly, finally deciding to let her in on the real scheme. It was time to reveal that the Mad Tyrant Act was just a prelude to rebellion. Choi Hyun-seok set Rachel down, his playful demeanor vanishing. "Listen carefully. I plan to train the slaves and initiate a rebellion," he whispered, his eyes intense with determination. Rachel froze, her tiny hands covering her mouth in shock. Our rebellion, the pieces finally clicked. The brutality, the flattery, the training, it wasn't madness, it was a meticulous preparation for war. The so-called traitor was actually plotting the greatest Trojan horse in history. Choi Hyun-seok laid out his blueprint for victory. 3,000 slaves versus 500 demon soldiers. Once we occupy the fortress and request support, the game is over. He visualized the uprising, armed laborers overwhelming their captors, securing the stronghold from within. Then, under the cover of night, the human alliance flag would rise, signaling the reinforcements waiting just outside. It was a gamble on sheer numbers and desperate courage, led by a hero hidden in plain sight. Tears of adoration filled Rachel's eyes, her doubt replaced by worship. "Hero, you're a genius," she cried, finally seeing the brilliance behind his madness. Choi Hyun-seok smirked, already counting his chickens. "If we succeed, I might receive a noble title." Smooth sailing, he boasted. To him, this wasn't just about saving lives. It was a fast track to wealth and status. With a cute angel as his cheerleader and a rebellion brewing, the hero's path was looking brighter than ever. Trembling with anticipation, Choi Hyun-seok opened the hero shop, expecting legendary weapons or god-tier skills. What he got was a slap in the face. Beginner hero shop abilities: hold breath F, hold poop F. His jaw dropped, eyes widening in sheer disbelief. He had debased himself, flattered a monster, and plotted treason for this to be a hero who could hold his breath and his bowels a little longer? The hero looked ready to strangle the system administrator. Sweat beaded on Choi Hyun-seok's forehead as he stared blankly ahead, his brain refusing to process the absurdity. Hold poop F stops your bodily functions for up to 24 hours. Cost 50 points. He read it again, hoping it was a hallucination. 50 hero points, half his hard-earned reward for the ability to not go to the bathroom. The hero felt a profound sense of betrayal. Was this a cosmic joke? Or was the path to saving the world simply paved with constipation? "Are you kidding me?" Choi Hyun-seok grabbed Rachel by the collar, shaking her violently. "The 100 points I earned with blood and sweat for this?" His face was flushed with rage, spit flying as he vented his frustration on the poor angel. Rachel, dizzy and terrified, frantically pointed at the holographic screen. "Wait, look carefully, there are other abilities." She squeaked, desperate to save herself from being thrown out the window by the furious hero. Scanning past the holding skills, hope flickered then died instantly. Cooking, cleaning, laundry ... double quotes the list read like a job application for a maid, not a savior. Hyun-seok's face contorted in pure horror. When exactly do the useful abilities show up? He screamed, sweat pouring down his face. Was the system trying to turn him into the Demon King's personal butler? The 100 points he slaved for were essentially worthless currency in this housekeeping simulator. Sensing the imminent danger, Rachel deployed her ultimate defense, lethal cuteness. "Maybe when you level up, Taehi," she winked, sticking out her tongue in a desperate attempt at agio. It backfired spectacularly. Choi Hyun-seok's expression went from annoyed to murderous. "Just die," he muttered coldly, raising a clenched fist. The charm offensive had failed. Now the only thing waiting for the little angel was a very painful lesson in why you don't tease a frustrated hero. Days passed, and the chaos turned to order. Everyone salutes, sing the anthem. Choi Hyun-seok commanded from his podium, check. 3,000 arms snapped up in unison, a sound sharp enough to cut the air. The slaves, once a disorderly mob, now stood in rigid formation, their eyes burning with a newfound discipline. To Redren, it was a beautiful display of loyalty. But under Hyun-seok's watchful gaze, it was an army in the making, honing its edge for the day of reckoning. Watching from his high window, Redren was overcome with emotion. Sniff. How pleased would the Demon King be if he saw this ... he murmured, wiping a tear from his large, bovine eye. The sight of thousands of humans moving in perfect sync filled his simple heart with pride. He saw loyalty, order, and glory. He failed to see that the discipline he admired was forged not for servitude, but for slaughter. The Minotaur was weeping for the very army that would soon hold a blade to his throat. Kwang, Jack kicked the door open, screaming the nightmare scenario. The human army is marching here. It was a trap. Redren's fist pulverized his desk in fury. The fortress was lost, yet amidst the evacuation chaos, the Minotaur made a fateful error born of admiration. We must take Choi Hyun-seok with us no matter what. He refused to abandon his star subordinate, unknowingly clutching a viper to his chest just as the walls began to close in. There's no time. We must leave immediately. Redren roared, snatching Choi Hyun-seok like a ragdoll. With superhuman speed, the Minotaur charged through the chaos, dragging his bewildered protege behind him. Hyun-seok flailed helplessly in midair, his grand plans of rebellion evaporating in the wind. He wasn't being rescued, he was being kidnapped by a monster who loved him too much to let him go. In a blur of red fury, Redren decimated the elite knights. Crash, boom. With a single swing, armored bodies were sent flying like ragdolls, smashing through solid stone walls as if they were paper. Choi Hyun-seok stood frozen, jaw slack, witnessing the true horror of the Red Nightmare. His plan to defect evaporated instantly. Against a monster who could swat knights like flies, rebellion wasn't just difficult, it was suicide. Redren causally shook the blood of 5 knights from his fist as if it were mere dust. Choi Hyun-seok, what are you doing? I said we need to go, he barked, his impatience growing. Snapping out of his terror-induced trance, Hyun-seok saluted with tears streaming down his face. Yes, Lord Redren, he sobbed. It wasn't a cry of loyalty, but of pure despair. The hero was being dragged deeper into hell by the very monster he had plotted to kill. Redren casually flicked the fresh blood of elite knights from his massive fist as if it were mere dust. Choi Hyun-seok, what are you doing? I said we need to go. The Minotaur barked, impatient amidst the carnage. Jolted from his shock, Hyun-seok snapped a perfect salute, tears streaming down his face like a broken dam. Yes, Lord Redren, he sobbed, this wasn't loyalty. It was the sheer terror of a hero realizing he was being dragged deeper into hell by a calamity he couldn't hope to defeat. Slap! Rachel's tiny hand struck Hyun-seok's cheek with surprising force, breaking his trance of despair. Snap out of it, hero, turn this into an opportunity. She urged, hovering fiercely, but the hero didn't see hope. He saw the culprit of his misery. Clutching his stinging face, he snapped back, don't talk about escaping, it's all your fault. If she hadn't dropped him into this hellhole, he wouldn't be a slave on his way to meet a demon commander. Redren's massive head loomed over the carriage, eyes burning like coals. Choi Hyun-seok, what's the matter? He rumbled, suspicious of the commotion. Hyun-seok jumped as if electrified, his despair instantly replaced by frantic cheerfulness. Nothing at all, haha, I'm just so honored. He lied through his teeth, performing a ridiculous dance of loyalty. Survival instinct kicked in, keep the monster happy, or end up like the pursuit squad headless and dead. The bloodthirsty Red Nightmare suddenly transformed into a shoujo romance lead? Redren gazed at Hyun-seok with sickeningly sweet affection, his bovine eyes sparkling with honey. Hello there, little adventurer. To Hyun-seok, this wasn't cute, it was psychological horror. The demon didn't just want him as a slave, he wanted him as a lifelong comrade. The sparkling aura only highlighted the terrifying reality. He was being forcibly adopted by the devil. Back at Hammer'n Fortress, the other heroes were intoxicated with relief. We're heroes after all, proper treatment at last. They cheered, believing their nightmare was over. They cursed Rachel for their suffering and dreamed of the comfortable lives owed to them. Their smiles were bright, their hopes high, completely oblivious that they were cattle being led to the slaughterhouse. The rescue was a lie. Their status as heroes was not a ticket to freedom, but a death sentence. While others celebrated, Park Tae-soo stood apart, his seasoned instincts screaming warning bells. Something feels off. This rope is rotten, he thought, eyeing the situation with suspicion. 30 years of surviving corporate politics had honed his senses. The kindness of the soldiers felt to smooth, the separation of heroes to deliberate. He saw the invisible frayed rope everyone else was eagerly grabbing, a lifeline that would surely snap and drop them into the abyss. Dugor Laban opened his arms wide, a benevolent grandfather figure welcoming his lost children. Welcome, heroes. Is there anyone here who is not a hero? He asked gently. The crowd, desperate for recognition and safety, roared in unison. No, we are all heroes. We are all heroes. They raised their hands, eager to claim their title. It was a perfect trap. By identifying themselves, they had just signed their own death warrants, mistaking the executioner for a savior. Good. Or Laban's warm smile twisted into a sinister grin, the mask of benevolence shattering in an instant. The sparkle in his eyes turned cold and predatory. He raised his hand casually as if ordering dinner. Begin. With that single word, he sentenced dozens of hopeful souls to oblivion. The rescue was over. The purge had begun. In this twisted world, the shining armor of a knight hid a heart darker than any demon's. The sky darkened not with clouds, but with death. A torrential rain of arrows descended, merciless and swift. Kyr, save me. Screams erupted as the heroes were cut down like wheat in a storm. Bodies fell in heaps, blood staining the dry earth crimson. There was no escape, no mercy. The hope of rescue transformed instantly into a massacre. In this cruel twist of fate, the human alliance proved to be executioners more efficient than any demon. Surrounded by piles of corpses, Dugor Laban threw his head back and laughed. Ha ha ha. His jovial roar echoed over the bloody field, a chilling contrast to the carnage. Those Demon King's army bastards can be useful sometimes. He chuckled, eyes gleaming with madness. To him, this wasn't murder, it was pest control. The esteemed commander, the supposed beacon of humanity, looked far more demonic than any creature with horns. Hiding in the shadows, Park Tae-soo curled into a trembling ball, cold sweat soaking his rags. He watched the slaughter with wide, terrified eyes, his heart hammering against his ribs. What is this? His instincts had saved his life, but the reality was worse than any nightmare. To survive, he had to keep his mouth shut and his identity buried deep. In this twisted world, being a hero was a death sentence, and silence was the only armor he had left. Just as Park Tae-soo thought he had slipped away, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. Are you perhaps a hero?" The soldier's smile was polite, but his eyes were predatory. "Black hair means you're either a hero or a demon race." Tae-soo froze, trapped. Deny it and be branded a demon. Admit it and join the corpses. Yes, no, I'm not. No ... double quotes, he stammered, panic seizing his throat. The kindness on the soldier's face was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. In the carriage, Choi Hyun-seok's eyes sparkled with delusional fervor. "I will survive, sweet romance, rabbit-like children, magnificent mansion." He shouted internally, fueling his will to live with fantasies of wealth and a happy family. Tears of determination streamed down his face as he clenched his fists. Perched on his shoulder, Rachel watched him with a mix of pity and exasperation. "Hero, get a grip," she muttered, sweating at the sight of her savior losing his mind to escapism. "Am I not allowed to be happy? Why does it have to be just me?" Choi Hyun-seok screamed, foaming at the mouth like a rabid beast. The frustration of being the only unlucky hero trapped in hell finally broke him. His eyes rolled back in madness, terrifying even his guardian angel. Rachel forced a smile, sweat pouring down her face as she tried to placate the lunatic. "Sure ... haha." She squeaked, realizing logic was useless against a man who had lost his grip on reality. Reedren's head shoved through the carriage window, horns scraping the frame. "Choi Hyun-seok, what's going on?" he grunted, eyeing the sudden silence. Hyun-seok froze, his breakdown instantly masked by a practiced smile. "I'm just so happy about meeting the course commander." "Haha," he lied, flashing a thumbs up while sweating bullets. The hero had mastered the art of survival, convert every scream of terror into a laugh of loyalty before the monster could smell the fear. Lightning tore through the blackened sky, illuminating a colossal fortress that dwarfed Hammern a tenfold. "We're approaching the Third Corps' headquarters," the soldier announced. Choi Hyun-seok and Rachel gazed out the window, mouths agape. The sheer scale of the demonic stronghold warped their sense of reality. This wasn't just a castle. It was a monolith of doom piercing the heavens. Hyun-seok gulped. He had escaped the frying pan only to be driven straight into the volcano. Standing before the ominous black doors adorned with demonic carvings, Ridrin gave a final warning. "Be careful not to show any disrespect," he rumbled, his massive fist rapping against the wood. "I'll keep that in mind," Hyun-seok replied solemnly, swallowing hard. But internally, the hero had already abandoned all dignity. "I'm prepared to lick toes if needed," he thought. Survival was the only quest now, and if that meant becoming a doormat for a demon lord, so be it. The door creaked open to reveal a figure of breathtaking elegance. Standing with her back to them, Corps Commander Hemis exuded a dark, seductive aura. Her long raven hair cascaded down, a silhouette that was pure perfection. "Come in," her voice chimed like jade bells. Hyun-seok's heart thumped violently. "Beautiful ... Maybe it doesn't have to be a blonde beauty after all ... he thought, instantly smitten. He was prepared for a monster, not a gothic goddess. Hemis turned around, and Hyun-seok's romantic fantasy shattered into a million pieces. Where a face should be, a blindfold covered her eyes, and below it ... a nightmare. Her mouth was a vertical abyss, stretching grotesquely wide, filled with rows of razor-sharp teeth dripping with saliva. "Ridrin, you came," the monstrosity spoke. Hyun-seok stood frozen, his soul leaving his body. The gothic goddess was literally all mouth and teeth. Hemis giggled, covering her grotesque maw with a delicate hand. "Ridrin, your muscles have become even more magnificent." "Ho ho ho," the Minotaur bowed, his voice dripping with grease. "You've become even more beautiful, Corps Commander." Witnessing this flirtation between monsters, Hyun-seok clutched his stomach, his face turning pale green. "Bullshit ... want to vomit," he thought. The sheer absurdity of a lip monster flirting with a bullman was more nauseating than any torture. Hemis's playful tone vanished, replaced by a suffocating purple aura that flooded the room. That crocodile head had the nerve to return alive? "I'm thinking of making him into a bag." Her whimsical cruelty was terrifying. Hyun-seok fell to his knees, clutching his throat as the magical pressure crushed his lungs. Gasp, "Erd." He struggled to breathe, realizing that this monster could snuff out his life with a mere thought. Her fashion sense was as deadly as her power. Hemis's grotesque mouth split open even wider, the skin stretching with a sickening shriek. Sound, the abyss within her throat seemed endless. "I won the Demon King's puppy. Want to see?" She gurgled gleefully, her rows of teeth glistening. Hyun-seok watched in horrified fascination, wondering how a puppy fit inside a person. He was about to learn that in the demon realm, even the pets defy the laws of physics and sanity. Hyun-seok's brain short-circuited as a massive black beast leapt out of Hemis's mouth like a cannonball. "Look, isn't it super cute? I named it Bobo." She squealed while the tiger-sized puppy snarled with rabid eyes. Ridrin nodded sagely. Ideally dignified, Hyun-seok stared blankly, trying to process the nightmare fuel. A tiger-sized puppy jumped out of her mouth? What the hell? Logic had left the chat long ago. Hemis thrust her face forward, her maw inches from Hyun-seok's nose. "Who's this human? Such a cute face and such delicate muscles." "I like it," she purred, her breath smelling of raw magic. Trembling with sweat pouring down his face, Hyun-seok forced a terrified smile. "Corps Commander, your lips are truly beautiful," he flattered for his life, praying she wouldn't kiss him, which in her case meant swallowing his head whole. Hemis slowly caressed Hyun-seok's chest, her sharp nails tracing lines over his heart. "No, instead, I'll take special care of you," she whispered, her voice dripping with possessive intent. A cold shiver raced down his spine. To Ridran, it was a promotion. To Hyun Seok, it felt like being seasoned for dinner. Don't pay that kind of attention. He screamed internally, paralyzed by the touch of a monster who saw him as nothing more than a new toy. Hemis pointed a slender finger at the drooling monstrosity beside her. From now on, you'll be assigned as my pet dog's caretaker. Bobo, the hellhound with eyes like burning coals, stared directly at Hyun Seok, its tongue lolling out hungrily. Pardon, Hyun Seok whimpered, his face draining of color. The beast didn't look like it needed grooming. It looked like it needed lunch. And apparently, the menu for today was freshly recruited hero. Hemis laughed delicately behind her fan, delivering a terrifying ultimatum. Make sure not to run out of snacks. Otherwise, you might become a snack yourself. Oh ho ho. Hyun Seok laughed along, tears streaming down his face in pure misery. Of course, haha, he agreed, dying inside. Behind them, Ridran grinned proudly, oblivious to the fact that he had just handed his favorite human a one-way ticket to a monster's belly. Under the gloomy moonlight, Choi Hyun Seok stared at the new system notification with a hollow gaze. Hero Quest, you've become Bobo's caretaker. Reward, 200 hero points. He sighed, feeling the weight of his degrading fate. Why does a hero like me have to do this ... double quotes beside him? Bobo, the hellhound chained to a stone pillar, growled menacingly, surrounded by ominous bones. Endure it, they say double quotes Hyun Seok thought bitterly. Survival meant babysitting a monster that saw him as a chew toy. Bobo slumbered peacefully, a giant black mountain of fur. Grr, poo hung. With every exhale, snot bubbles popped and drool pooled on the stone floor like a small lake. Hyun Seok watched the sleeping beast, a mix of disgust and worrying on his face. Am I going to raise this big guy alone? He wondered. The cutie described by Hemis was a snoring, slobbering nightmare that could crush him by simply rolling over in its sleep. Greetings, worthless human, I am Hoken. A shrill voice pierced the air. Hyun Seok turned to find a goblin wielding a spear, posturing like a drill sergeant. Instinctively reverting to his survival mode, Hyun Seok bowed a perfect 90 degrees. Nice to meet you, he replied politely. Inside, however, he was skeptical. This pint-sized senior looked less like a caretaker and more like bite-sized goblin jerky. Hemis's comment about tender meat suddenly made perfect sense. Hoken puffed out his chest, trying to look authoritative. Our job is to prepare Lord Bobo's meals. If we don't, he will eat us. The goblin glanced nervously at the sleeping beast, his bravado cracking. Hyun Seok stood silent, processing the brutal simplicity of their role. Double quotes, he muttered. So they weren't caretakers, they were backup rations. The job description was simple. Keep the monster fed or become the entree. Kwang, Bobo awoke with a deafening roar, his red eyes burning with hunger. Hoken scrambled forward, trembling like a leaf in a storm. Great Lord Bobo, I've prepared a meal here, he squeaked, offering a bowl of mystery meat. The hellhound sniffed it once and snarled in disgust. To Bobo, the stale scraps were trash, but the shaking goblin holding the bowl? Now that smelled like fresh, tender meat. Bobo ignored the bowl completely, his saliva dripping onto the floor as he locked eyes with Hoken, RAAAWR. The beast's snarl wasn't a complaint about the food, it was a declaration of preference. Hoken froze, realizing he was the main course. No. He whimpered, sweat pouring down his green skin. The goblin who preached about meal preparation was about to become the ultimate example of workplace hazards in the Demon King's army. The dungeon light flickered as Hoken's betrayal struck. Shoving Choi Hyun Seok forward, the treacherous goblin announced with a twisted grin, I've prepared a human special. Panic surged through Choi. You crazy goblin, what are you doing? He screamed, realizing the senior he trusted intended to serve him this Bobo's meal. Hoken's malicious finger pointed the way to death, leaving Choi paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of becoming dog food. Survival instinct kicked in, Channeling his fighter reflexes, Choi Hyun-seok locked the treacherous goblin in a vice grip. "Stop spouting nonsense." With a powerful heave, he launched Hoken through the air. The goblin flailed helplessly, screaming, "Save me." As he plummeted toward the drooling maw of the massive beast, Bobo, the tables turned in an instant. The would-be executioner was now the main course for the hungry monster. The beast's jaw snapped shut with a sickening crunch. Bobo chewed happily, savoring the goblin meat like a high-class snack. Nom, nom, the sounds of Hoken's demise echoed through the dungeon. Witnessing the gruesome end of his senior, Choi Hyun-seok knelt in mock solemnity. With a single crocodile tear rolling down his cheek, he clasped his hands together. He ate well, he thought, offering a silent, sarcastic prayer for the goblin who tried to kill him. The dungeon floor quaked as Bobo found his new target, RAAWR. With eyes glowing crimson, the beast lunged at the terrified fairy. Rachel frantically flapped her wings, barely dodging the massive claws that shattered the stone beneath. "Hero, do something. I'm about to become fairy sashimi," she shrieked. To the giant Volf, she was nothing more than a flying snack. Dust billowed as the chase intensified, leaving Rachel mere inches from being devoured. SASHIMI ... sounds delicious. For a second, Choi Hyun-seok's mind wandered to food, ignoring the chaos. But the thundering footsteps were a wake-up call. Bobo was burning calories fast chasing Rachel. "Wait, I need to feed him before he gets hungry again." Hoken was just an appetizer. As the beast snapped at the screaming fairy's heels, Choi realized the grim truth. If he didn't find the next meal soon, he would be the main course. Amidst the chaos, a memory flashed through Choi Hyun-seok's mind. Hoken's final, desperate command before becoming dog food echoed with haunting clarity. "We need to prepare snacks. Move to the kitchen." That was the key. Bobo wasn't satisfied with raw scraps. He wanted cuisine. Choi's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope, only for it to be instantly crushed by a cold reality. He was a stranger in this demon castle. That's it. But I don't have a clue where the damn kitchen is. Desperate for a lifeline, Choi summoned the hero shop. He expected legendary gear to subdue the beast, but the holographic interface mocked him with a yard sale of junk, sleeping pillows, rusty spoons, and old boots. His brow twitched in irritation. Was this system pranking him? "Just what do you think a hero is ... double quotes," he gritted out, staring at the list of useless garbage while his life hung in the balance. Suddenly, a golden radiance blinded him from the interface. Buried among the useless trash items was a treasure radiating divine light, the giant bone that large dogs love. The system description was comically simple yet perfect for his predicament. Effect: large dogs love it. For a meager 30 points, this wasn't just a chew toy. It was his lifeline. A smirk tugged at Koi's lips. Who knew a hero's salvation would come in the form of an oversized dog treat? A wicked glint flashed in Choi Hyun-seok's eyes. The absurdity of the item was now his greatest weapon. "This could work," he muttered, his confidence surging back. Operation Playing with Bobo begins. With the decisiveness of a tactician making a winning move, his finger stabbed the buy button. The digital interface rippled under his touch. It was time to see if a mere 30 hero points could truly tame the demon hound and secure his survival. "Bobo, fetch!" Choi Hyun-seok shouted, hurling the massive golden bone with all his might. Swish! The item hummed with magical allure as it cut through the stale dungeon air. In an instant, the ferocious predator vanished, replaced by an excited, albeit gigantic, puppy. Bobo's claws tore up the stone floor as he launched himself after the shining prize. The strategy was simple: turn the deadly beast into a playful pet to buy another day of life. Kwang! Jaw snapped shut with terrifying precision. Bobo executed a flawless mid-air catch, defying his massive bulk. Gravity reclaimed the beast, paws skidding to a halt as dust billowed around him. The murderous aura evaporated instantly, replaced by the simple, primal joy of a successful fetch. With the golden prize clamped firmly in his teeth, the apex predator was tamed. For the first time, the hero shop wasn't a scam, it was a miracle. Whoosh, whoosh, the dungeon air whipped into a frenzy. Bobo, delighted with his prize, unleashed his tail like a metronome of destruction. The resulting gusts battered Choi Hyun-seok and sent poor Rachel tumbling through the air. Watching the lethal sway of that muscular appendage, Choi gulped. This wasn't just canine happiness, it was a blunt force hazard. If you get hit by that, he calculated with a cold sweat, it's at least for weeks in the hospital. Whoosh, whoosh, the dungeon air whipped into a frenzy. Bobo, delighted with his prize, unleashed his tail like a metronome of destruction. The resulting gusts battered Choi Hyun-seok and sent poor Rachel tumbling through the air. Watching the lethal sway of that muscular appendage, Choi gulped. This wasn't just canine happiness, it was a blunt force hazard. If you get hit by that, he calculated with a cold sweat, it's at least for weeks in the hospital. Bobo's affection level has increased, the notification was sweet victory. Petting the deadly beast, Koi's ego soared, nice. By logic, if the commander loves Bobo, and Bobo loves me, I am the commander's favorite. He proclaimed he felt invincible. Rachel, however, stared at him with pure pity. Did you hit your head? She asked bluntly. To the fairy, this wasn't a brilliant survival strategy, it was just a sign of brain damage. The warm atmosphere of their playtime evaporated instantly. Bobo's crimson eyes locked onto Choi, a thick tongue savoring the anticipation of a meal rather than affection. The fetch game was over. The biological clock was ticking. Koi's exhaustion turned into cold terror as sweat dripped down his face. This dog isn't grateful. It's just hungry. He realized the harsh truth. All that bonding meant nothing against a rumbling stomach. He wasn't a friend, he was emergency rations. Desperately hoping to satiate the beast, Choi presented the bowl of mixed meats. Hunger is the best sauce, he prayed. Bobo took a tentative bite, chewed, and then PTUI. The scraps were rejected with absolute disdain. This gourmet monster demanded haute cuisine, not leftovers. Choi wiped his face, his heart sinking as the reality set in. Damn. What kind of dog is this picky ... If the bowl wasn't enough, the handler was the only fresh meat left on the menu. The ultimate diversion tactic. Choi Hyun-seok beamed with a forced brightness, masking his desperation. Bobo, shall we go for a walk? The magic word pierced through the beast's gluttony. Instantly, the terrifying predator vanished, replaced by a giddy puppy panting in excitement. Heck, hey, even a demon Volf couldn't resist the call of the outdoors. It was the perfect ruse to lead the hungry monster to the kitchen and away from Koi's own neck. Lepel, the veteran goblin, spotted an intruder. A human walking freely in the demon army's base? It was the perfect chance to flex his non-existent authority. Puffing up his chest to compensate for his bald head, he marched over aggressively. Hey, you, Lepel barked, blocking the path. Why is a human loitering here? He launched his interrogation with arrogant swagger, completely unaware that interrupting this particular walk could be a fatal mistake. Lepel's arrogance shattered instantly. His eyes bulged in pure terror as he realized his fatal mistake. The weak human wasn't alone. Standing calmly beneath the shadow of the monstrous beast, Choi introduced himself with a polite bow. I'm Choi Hyun-seok, Lord Bobo's handler. Behind him, Bobo's crimson eyes glowed, drool dripping from jaws that had just swallowed a goblin whole. Lepel's knees shook. He was face to face with the Grim Reaper's pet. Scrop, the rough tongue dragged across Lepel's bald scalp like sandpaper. It wasn't a sign of affection, it was a taste test. The veteran goblin froze, his soul leaving his body as Bobo savored the salty glaze of his fear sweat. Double quotes. Lepel trembled violently under the predator's gaze. To him, this wasn't a greeting, it was a dinner reservation. He was terrified he was about to become the second course after Hoken. The warm stain of humiliation spread across Lepel's trousers. His veteran composure leaked out along with his bladder control. Witnessing the pathetic display, Choi calmly patted the drooling beast. "Oh no! Don't eat him, Bobo, you'll get sick." It was a rescue wrapped in a savage insult. Lepel stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face, realizing that in the eyes of the handler, he wasn't even worthy of being dog food. He was just junk food that causes indigestion. Desperate to salvage his crumbling pride, Lepel pointed a trembling finger at Choi. Lepel, will be watching. Work hard." He spun around, marching off with stiff legs to hide the shame running down his thighs. His attempt at a dignified exit was ruined by the dark, spreading stain on his trousers. Rachel pinched her nose, gagging at the ammonia assault. Why did he suddenly pee himself? The smell is overwhelming. The veteran left a trail of stench, not glory. A chill ran down Corey's spine. The massive shadow beside him had vanished, leaving only a slack chain and scattered bones. Bobo was gone. Pure terror washed over him as the realization hit. A hungry demon wolf was now loose in a camp full of food. "Bobo, where are you?" Choi screamed, his face contorted in panic. If he didn't find that dog instantly, the massacre wouldn't just be limited to lunch, it would be his own execution. Burp. A satisfied belch thundered from the beast. From Bobo's bloody maw, a pile of chewed bones and a distinct helmet clattered to the ground. THUD, the grim evidence lay exposed. Before Choi could process the horror, panic erupted across the camp. "Company Commander Regis is dead!" Screamed the soldiers. Corey's soul left his body. His cute pet hadn't just gone for a snack. He had assassinated a high-ranking officer. "Looks like we're screwed," Choi whispered, accepting his doom.